Yeah, wow, that's an honor, Dorothy. Thank you for that. Cardinal Collins, he's with us today to speak to our ladies group. He doesn't need a lot of introduction, but I'll say a couple words. You know, Dorothy mentioned earlier that I worked side by side with Cardinal Collins for about 6 years as his MC, as his um, priest secretary. I remember asking the priest that I took over for, Father Dominic Barber, you know, I said, my one fear is that I'm going to do something wrong and Archbishop Collins is going to, you know, yell at me or lose his cool or whatever. Because that's the last thing you want is your bishop getting angry at you. It's one thing if you know, your pastor gets angry at you. It's like, oh, the old curmudgeon, you know, but your bishop. Anyway, Father Dominic said, I don't think you could do anything that would set the cardinal off or set the archbishop off at all. So the archbishop was ordained a priest when he was 26 years old. I like to remind him that I wasn't even born back in 1973. He's been a priest for 47 years. He's been a bishop for 23 years. He's been a cardinal for 8.56 years. CatholicHierarchy.org is very helpful in these things. And I'll just say just one thing. There are no two versions of this man. The man you see is who he is. There's no second version of him that people don't get to see. He's genuine and open, and we're very fortunate to have him. So I'll stop talking so that Cardinal Collins can talk.
Oh,
well, I would like to, just if I could, just to thank Cardinal Collins for joining us today. I also wanted to thank Cardinal Collins for supporting the Catholic Moms ministry. I know that he has a real heart for Catholic mothers, and he has a real heart for everyone in the Archdiocese. And I just wanted to publicly say that I guess when the pandemic broke out and the churches shut down, like, I was overcome by all of the different responses, even at my own kitchen table, and listening to the news and listening to my husband. And I began to go like a little bit crazy. And I would tune in every day to Cardinal Collins. And it really grounded me. That mass grounded me, because there were all these like voices. And it felt to me like Cardinal Collins was the only person that made any sense at the time. And so I wanted to thank you, Cardinal Collins, because it also sparked something in me, because I thought, he's here, he's shepherding to everyone in the Archdiocese. And I'm like, I'm a leader. I've got to be doing something. Like, I can't just cave because there's a pandemic. I need to minister. And so how you blessed the Archdiocese by celebrating that Mass every single day, and, you know, publicly getting on your knees every single day and praying the rosary, I know has affected thousands and thousands and thousands of lives. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, thanks, Dorothy.
Because it's just been such a gift. Before you, I guess, share your talk, I'm kind of curious, and not curious is the wrong word, but I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit about your mom and, you know, what, like, first of all, what was her name and how did she affect your faith journey, and just some of the symbols. Yeah. So.
Okay, I'm very, very glad to do that. Is my voice coming through? That's okay. Well, my mother was born in England. She was born in 1900 and in Birmingham, England, and she came over to Canada around 1904. And so she had settled in Brantford. The family settled there in Brantford, and then she worked in different things. She worked with actually the Canadian Mausoleum Company. So whenever I go to our Catholic cemeteries, I think, oh, here's a little bit of the story of my mom and dad. And she was an office manager setting up an office in Guelph, Ontario, to sell place to build a mausoleum and then sell slots in it, I guess. And she wanted to, as a good Catholic lady, she wanted to find a good place to stay. And so she checked with the pastor, and she settled, she got a room at the family, the O'Brien family, who were relatives of the Collins family. And so the Collinses came over, and one Thomas Collins came over, and he gradually spent more and more time with my mother than with the other members of the family. So he began to, they got together, they dated for many years, a long time, and then they were married in 1938. So that was when they got married. And then my father, my mother and father basically were, they moved to Guelph. So they had their first child was my sister Catherine, who was born in 1939, and then my sister Patricia, who died a few years ago, well, 5 years ago, was born in 1940, and then my brother George was born in 1942, but he died as an infant. He had the spina bifida, which was a difficult, terrible disease, so he only survived a short time. So I was born in 1947, and so my mother was, when I was born, my mother was 47 and my father was 52. So this is not so common a thing. I was sort of born late in life. So my mother was it's extremely creative, just very organized and very clear in her thinking. And they say, I don't know whether I'm not one to testify to this, but they say that my face is a lot like hers, especially my eyes and my eyebrows. I don't know, but my sister tells me that. And in fact, when I was a little baby, little baby, somebody came and famously said to my mother, "Oh, the little one, he's the very image of you." So I guess if you look at this part here, that's sort of what she looked like. So she was really just amazing. A great sense of humor and very creative. She raised our family and with my dad. My dad was ill for many, many years. He was sick for a long time, and so she really had quite a burden of struggle to help care for the family. My sister Kathy also got a position as a teacher to help support the family, but I was just the junior in the family, so I kind of sailed through all that without having to worry so much. And so Mom was very, very wonderful, and she had a job as a lawyer's secretary, McAlder, Morris and Matthews in Guelph, and then because we're all from Guelph, and then she died in 1978. She had a lot of illnesses, leukemia especially, and so she died when I was over in Rome. She was already, for many years she'd had this difficulty, and then I was able to get back by the Friday. I remember I got back in June of 1978. I hurried up my exams at the Biblical Institute, and I was able to go there, be with her for a few days with my sisters, and then I anointed her on the Sunday, and she died on the following Wednesday. So, yeah, so a little bit about my mother.
Yes, can you tell us a little bit about how she affected your faith life and sort of the traditions at home?
Well, I was really blessed, and I think I realize this is a true blessing that, and I often talk about this with my sister, that we were really had a wonderful family experience, because my mom and dad, who were very, very different, they really loved one another. And I would say that that kind of home, it's hard to describe it. It was just that experience was a great source of strength for all of us. And certainly for me in my own life as a little child, My dad was more, he was more explicitly religious than my mother. My dad would be very much involved. He would, in the life of the parish. Mom was very faithful, practicing Catholic, but Dad was more into more specific things. Like he would go up, and I remember going with him to the Eucharistic adoration through the night, the Nocturnal Adoration Society, things like that. So Mom was very sharp and clear and vibrant in kind of that kind of a way, real dynamic. Dad was calm and it's like a solid rock, very devout, very prayerful, and very, very calm. And a saint in the way he dealt with his sicknesses. He had skin, he's like Job. He had skin disease, he had stroke, he had tuberculosis, he had all these things. It was really hard. So mom and dad together, they were different. Mom was more, you might say, they were both very faithful Catholics. Mom was more sort of dynamic and like she's a real, astonishing creativity in her mind. It's just amazing, really. And Dad was that kind of very solid, faithful guy. So the two of them, I would say just the two of them together, helped me in my faith. And when I decided to become a priest, Dad had already died. He died in 1972, which makes me think something because I'm 73, and I think, good grief, Dad always seemed kind of old to me because he was. My mom and dad both all seemed old to me because most of my friends in school, their parents were in their 20s and their 30s and 40s, let's say. And my parents were in their 60s or 70s. So it was the different, I've sort of a whole generation, all my aunts and uncles, I always think of aunts and uncles as being 70-year-old, 80-year-old, 90-year-old. So it was a bit different. But just the two of them together, I'd say. And the mom was just a wonderful, loving, I'm just blessed to have had that.
No, and it's just so beautiful to hear about just the endurance of the crosses and in the endurance of the marriage through the crosses. I think one of the challenges, in our culture right now with social media and Instagram, is that a lot of moms and families kind of expect to have a cross-free life. We just have this beautiful collage, and it's just not reality, right? Like this beautiful collage isn't reality. And so sometimes when, we have a husband who is sick or a child who's imperfect or, the two different personalities in a marriage, clash, well, that's the part of the beautiful mosaic. So thank you for sharing that. Could you tell us a little bit about, just before you start the talk, in terms of how COVID affected your role at the cathedral and just and your role as a shepherd? We're looking forward to hearing your talk, but just a little bit informally.
Oh, well, it obviously affects us all in many of the same ways. And of course, it's become less stringent, but we have to. One thing, we're getting a lot of warnings, not only from the Premier, but we're really concerned. We want to be sure that we don't all, now that we've gone beyond whatever phase one or two or something, and it looks like it's getting better and we're opening things up. It's important to look back to that time. Nobody liked the time when everything was locked up tighter than a drum, that kind of a thing. And we want to get out of that. We want to be sure we don't go back there. And so I know the Premier's been saying a lot about let's not get, now's not the time to get lax, or we're going to end up in where we were before. And I found that the same. Like it was an awful, well, we've all had a similar experience. We were just, I know for personally, we all much the same. Mind you, I got a pretty big house to live in. It's like an apartment building. It's the oldest house in Toronto that's still being used. It's the big rectory. I live there with 9 other priests, so we have a little community there. we all have our little apartments in the on the different floors of the building, the 3 floors there. So it's got a little courtyard behind, and I would walk up and down there at the evening, trying to get some exercise, praying the rosary and doing back and forth. But I didn't leave the property for, like none of us did really. I guess we were all kind of caught up at home. That was obviously, well, it had its challenges for everyone, and I found it a bit much. But it's what everyone was going through. It really was difficult for everyone when we had to shut the churches down out of a concern, for the, the danger that was more imminent at that time. Well, it still is there. And I remember I would often do my praying and like walking up and down the empty church and thinking, good grief, this is, it's very beautiful to be in the cathedral alone, but that's not what it's meant for. So I found that personally, one of the happiest moments I had was when we were able to, I think because of very careful work done by a lot of people, and a lot of prayer and a lot of work, we were able to get the churches open finally, to be able to walk out the door during that opening of that first Mass we had and open the gates of the cathedral. That was so beautiful, because I thought, I knew we were going to get there. We were getting there, and we were being very careful. And if we are careful, we have to care for other people. So it was, we all faced that same thing. It's just, you become a little frustrated at not being able to move around.
Yes, and I know that in our own ministry, there's been, our mothers group leaders that are here today are sort of, I describe this as being a bit of a fireside chat with Cardinal Collins and Father Curtis and Dr. Lombardi about, leadership. And we've experienced like this spectrum of responses from our own mothers group leaders. And I would imagine that, as a shepherd of, I don't know, is it 225 parishes?
About 2 million people, 225 parishes.
Parishes, yeah. So I'm sure you too have seen different responses from, different priests and parishes. And, like some of our mothers group leaders have embraced it gangbusters, and they're going to continue ministering, and we're hosting virtual meetings, and they're fired up and excited by the technology. And then you've got the other mothers group leader that says, no, I'm waiting until this is over.
Yeah.
I'm like, what if it's not over, girlfriend? I'd be curious to sort of hear a little bit about you observing the different responses as a leader as well.
Well, we do get different responses. I'm very happy, and we've had different meetings like this webinar type things with the priests, with the people working in the parishes, the staff, the pastoral assistants, so on. And I've been really impressed by the the creativity. This is not a time to slow down. This is a time to double up, speed up, because this is an unexpected crisis. Like who would have known at the beginning of March we're going to face this thing? So it suddenly just whomp, it kind of hits us. And I think there's been a great deal of anger. It's understandable anger. There's also been a great deal of misunderstanding. And that's part of my work. And I think I may not be doing, I've just seen this lately. I don't know that I do a good enough job on that. I get a stack like this of letters and emails, pretty well every day, away for a while. And I sometimes I don't reply to them. And I don't reply to a lot of them because first of all, I don't know what to say sometimes. And I figure, I don't know, I got to get a system together. So I'm sorry anyone wrote to me and I haven't gotten back to you. Sometimes I can get back to them because I can think of what to say. But to sit down and try to figure it out for a couple of hours for each letter would be really what we're required. I just can't do it. One little me, So I probably have to get maybe get other people doing it. But just, and you don't want to say, well, I guess I should maybe say, got your letter, thank you very much, goodbye. Somebody spent hours, I've spent 5, I guess actually I got a reply once. I wrote something like, thank you very much. I really appreciate your concerns. I read them all. By the way, I do read everything that I can get through. And then I'm sure it's being filtered out and you're being something. No, I read everything. I'm thankful for it. And I remember writing back, thank you very much. And then I get a fiery response. I spent 10 hours or something writing that letter, 10-page long letter or something. And all you give me is thank you for the letter. Have you no more concern?
Yes.
That's when I dive under the desk in a fetal position and say, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I'm sorry. I can't. But anyway, I've got to do something. I've got to just have an automatic letter. Like I wrote maybe this is the way to do it. I know I wrote a letter of condolence to Pope Benedict on the death of his brother, and I wrote a little note to him. And he's 93 or 4 or so, and I wrote it in English, so I don't know German. But I must say, I've got to learn this. I got back a form letter from him, from I guess one of his assistants, in English. So they separate the letters over it. And it just basically said, I'm sorry, I can't reply to all the letters. I received a couple of thousand letters, and I'm not in good condition, but I really appreciate your letter. Thank you so much. And it was kind of a printed thing, but I thought, oh, maybe I should do more of that. But I do think one of the troubles we do have is we have one thing I find difficult is, it's life, is there's a lot of anger. And I think this is affecting a lot of things, even these riots in the States and a lot of these things. There's the disproportionate, wow, I think the COVID thing with everyone locked up tighter than a drum, I think it has an effect, and it has certainly an effect on domestic violence. Mm-hmm. It is, and I think it has an effect in this people venting, with anger. They always say it goes in one place and comes out the other. Someone has a bad day at the office and then they yell at someone back at home, and it may not seem to be connected, but there's something happens there. So I think a lot of the anger and frustration that comes from being cooped up and facing this constant threat of danger really leads to people, look at Twitter. Oh my gosh, I do sometimes look at the anger, the viciousness, and there's people yelling at one another. And so I can only expect it in the church. It's part of our life. Yeah. So I find that difficult, and especially people, it would say, why do you keep the churches closed? Have the government say that the church is not essential, and why don't you fight them and give them a punch, stand up for Jesus and all that. Well, I sympathize with it, but actually the government's been very good to us. We have never had pushback from them at all. They even assigned a minister to care for religious groups. They're dealing with economy and stuff. They don't really deal with the religion in that way. They deal with it in other ways, but they do deal with it. Mm-hmm. So I must say that we don't have some big bad government saying we want to crush religion or anything. I can see how people might think that, though, if the churches are closed, Mm-hmm. But actually what we were doing is we were behind the scenes working like mad, getting in a really high-powered doctor and putting a huge amount of effort into producing this thing called Worship Safe, where we just try to be sure that we get it right and we follow all the best things. We hand that into the government. We hand it into the health authorities, and they put out general norms for you can't do this and you can't do that. But I think when they took one look at what we were doing, even the videos of how we distribute communion and all that, they said, they basically say, well, they know what they're doing. Yes. And that has helped us a lot. So really the problem is not we're being persecuted. We are being persecuted in other ways, but that's another topic. Yeah,
sometimes I say that what breaks my heart is watching Catholics persecute the other Catholic, and there's all this anger. Oh my gosh. So
it's really quite horrendous, yeah.
No, it is.
But we're not being persecuted by the provincial government.
No. So I wanted to, just on the behalf of just all of us who are here today, and just to thank you for all of your hard work. And so we look forward to, I guess, hearing your reflection on leading during a pandemic.
Okay, so now I give my talk. Okay. Here it is. I always have a few little pieces of paper here. Now I'll make them into an airplane. And I'll put them across the room, and then I'll say, "Oh my gosh, what am I going to do?" Well, I tell you, here we are. I've got a few points here, and I hope that well, I'll go for a while, and then I think you would say about till around 11 or so.
Yeah, and I do have a couple of other little questions, but I'll save them till after your talk because you might answer them during the talk, right?
Oh yeah, but what I'll do, I'll end off maybe 10 to 11 or so, and if you
Perfect.
figure that there are any other things you want to talk about, that would be.
I just
That
want
would
to
be
thank
great.
you. Oh, I just want to.
No, I'd be glad to do that. So what I thought would be good to do, start with the bad and go to the good. Probably have the dessert at the end, and get through the grim stuff first. But I've actually already talked a bit about that, so maybe I don't have to spend much time on it. But this is obviously for a lot of people. First of all, the people who have caught the disease, especially older people, but now they say it's younger people, because the younger ones maybe sometimes young people feel they're invulnerable and they're all partying together and they all get COVID or something. So, but it's been a terrible thing. You think of particularly, you think of the people in the homes where, a large number of people who died, and that's obviously something that's being dealt with now, but this is a major thing. So the heart of it all, this is a tragedy. This is a plague, and it's funny. I've always wanted to read the book, the great Italian masterpiece of prose, The Betrothed by Manzoni. And so finally, I got around to reading it. I've got with the time you have with this lockdown, you had a bit more time to read. So I read it, and it talks about what happened in Milan around the 1630s when you had a plague in the city. And it sounded awfully familiar. People distancing from one another, that the churches kind of shut down. We do know that St. Charles Borromeo had to close the churches because of the plague. They knew that it went from person to person. I mean, they didn't have modern testing and science, but they knew that. In fact, my mother, if you want a little mother anecdote, she, since she was born in 1900, she was 18 in 1918 when the Spanish flu came through, which was a huge thing, killed millions of people. And she would talk about in St. Mary's Church in Brantford, how the parishioners would gather outside the church. They shut the church. And so I know what it's like, they shut the church. And the priest would be saying mass inside the church. But the people would be outside the church. This sounds all very familiar to us now. This was in 1918 because they knew you couldn't go in the church because of, I guess we would call it social distancing and so on. So this has been the thing itself, the effect has been terrible, especially the people who have caught the disease and or their relatives. A horrible thing we see in Northern Italy, particularly and in our own situation, at funerals, when someone or someone who's dying, and then you have the funeral and the family has a great difficulty and you can't have a large number of people present and so on. So that's a horrible thing. And so that's what we're dealing with. And I think in terms of leadership, we have to deal with the suffering, reach out in every way we can to people who are facing these horrible realities. Also, many people who have lost their jobs. I think especially like around Toronto, the whole airline industry and everything connected to it. So many people, not just, pilots, people on the planes, but people servicing the planes and all that. That's a huge thing. And many restaurants and things like that. That in turn, I think, has caused a great stress in families very often. So I think our first concern in terms of the dark side of this very real plague we're facing is that. And so what we're trying to do is respond. The cutting off in the terms of spiritual life, the shutting of the churches was the most horrible thing. And I did it slowly. I did first no Sunday Mass, then weekly, but then we had to shut the church because people were saying, stay back home. We didn't want people going and being damaged. And our Lord said, love your neighbor. So we have to think of it. That's where the live streaming began. It's not the same as Mass, but we've been doing something like it with the daily Mass up at Loretto Abbey, and hundreds of thousands of people have been watching that. That's done, a week or two or three before. or about a week before. And so what with the live streaming, it is done right at the same time. But it was an effort to reach out to do what we can. And we're still doing it because there's still people who, for various reasons, are not able to come to Mass now that we've been able to open the churches. So that was a very a difficult fact in terms of our spiritual life. To be, if you don't have a sacramental faith, I suppose just reading the Bible or having a live stream talk on the Bible is pretty well as good as being in a church. But to receive the Blessed Sacrament, to be able to get to confession, it's important for us to do that. And so that was a difficult thing. And then dealing, I mentioned already, with the anger that comes from people being cooped up and angry, and dealing with the frustrations of it all. That continues. We're hoping that right now we're trying to send out a message to the parishes. This is no time to slack off, because we're getting through a difficult period with the opening of the schools. If we, in this month-long pause the premiers put in place, if we all start flipping backwards, we don't want that. This is no time to be sort of getting loosey-goosey with our protections. It's got to be, the mask, the sanitizing, the distance, the whole bit. We pray for the day when we don't have it. But if we don't do it, we're going to be in it longer than we shouldn't be in it at all, but we're going to be in it longer. One thing I found very difficult, and I think a lot of people have in this time, is the removal of me telling the people we are not distributing communion on the tongue. That is a source of immense pain to many, many, many people. And it's not just a sort of a trivial thing, it's a very deep thing. And it is a thing within the faith of the church, within the law of the church, that person has the option of receiving on the hand or on the tongue. That's very difficult. The problem is that just several months ago, I used to think, well, I used to joke, you don't open doors with your tongue, with your hands more dirty than the tongue. Well, no, actually, I got some advice from very, very devout, faithful Catholic doctors, who I think all would prefer to receive communion on the tongue. And I got it independently as well. There was a study done about testing for COVID. Nothing to do with religion, testing for COVID. And because the sticking a thing down your nose is not very comfortable and everything, there's a better way. They tested different parts of the body, like the head, where COVID is found. Where is it found? How could you? And they've discovered, the good news is, they discovered a simpler way than sticking something down your nose. And I think they're eventually going to, saliva. It's very simple, because the mouth is abundant in COVID if you have it. And so that's a simple way to find it. Just take the test, you do some kind of test with that. Now, the bad news is, that does tell us why the medical people, not the government, but the medical people are saying, look, sticking the hand in the mouth is not what can I say? It's not a good thing, because you're conveying this to others. So what can I do? One thing some people do every morning when I distribute communion in the cathedral, there's a lady who comes up with a little silver plate, like a little paten. And so I don't want people running out and buying silver plates or anything, but she comes up and I just say the body of Christ and I put it on the plate, and she steps aside and I guess receives it like that. I mean, the point is not, I guess you could say, the point is not to receive it in the hand. The point is we can't at the moment have the option. It's just like people say, but it's our right. Well, yeah, we have a right to go 100 kilometers an hour down the 401. We all have that right. It's in the law. But not in a snowstorm. Not in a snowstorm. So everyone, it's a snowstorm, So I hate to do it. I loved it. We want to get back to this. I personally, I just held on, and I made sure I stuck into the rules we got. As soon as possible, we go back to the way, which is a very, very good way to go. Anyway, but dealing with anger, and the thing is, I agree with the people who are angry, but they just don't understand. I know you have a right to this, but really I can't. It would be irresponsible for me to put people at risk in that way. And when you can receive our blessed Lord in another way. So there we are. Anyway, that's the other financial challenge, which is, that's just negative stuff. I only do a short time of the negative, get more to the positive, is the other difficulty is the financial difficulty for families who are struggling, because they've lost their job, things like that, and so on. But also our own community. Like I would have never imagined in a million years, I never even thought there would come a time when we don't have collections every Sunday. We pay our employees, like at the diocese. We pay our employees, we build things, we turn on the electricity, we heat the buildings and all that. We do everything with the money we receive by free will donations from the people. I tell you, that's a heck of a lot better than the German system where you get a check from the government. And I'm afraid, I won't go to a rant about the German system, but it's the free will of the people. Well, you just suddenly click, like everyone, people at home who've just lost there, we just suddenly, the funding is, it's gone. So we've been really impressed. I mean, there's a lot of people are helping out, even if they may themselves be facing real financial difficulty, but especially Share Life. Like we're dipping into the reserves, and Catholic Charities is doing the same. But we're hoping, and we're finding a lot of people in the midst of perhaps their own financial suffering, are reaching out to help, because now's the time. We have more people who need to be helped by Share Life, more than ever before. And so we're very grateful that people, and for the parishes, people have been very, very generous despite their own suffering. And that helps us to keep proceeding. For which I think we should all be very grateful. It's a sign of the strength of the faith and the sacrifice of the people. Some other things, just more maybe on the more positive side, or the things we can maybe in leadership, being the bishop during this period of time. I thought one of the first things I thought is important for my own ministry is to be present. My hero, I got 3 heroes, bishop heroes. One of them is John Fisher. So I had his face carved on the cathedral. And he was the only bishop who stood up to the government when the government was persecuting the church. The other one I have is Francis de Sales, who was very much involved in communicating, reaching out, using what was possible around the time of Shakespeare. And I think that's what we're doing in this epidemic. We're doing like reaching out in different ways. But the other one is Charles Borromeo. And Charles Borromeo, it's funny, he was a very, very great saint. He was the Bishop of Milan in the mid-1500s. He became a cardinal at the age of 22 because his uncle was the Pope. So it was nepotism. It was a total corrupt system. Now, mind you, he also earned a couple of doctorates by the time he was 20, so he was competent in a lot of ways. He was a great saint, a great saint. And when he finally got the Pope to let him to go to his diocese of Milan to serve the people there was a plague. And a lot of people left the city, and the bishop stayed in the cathedral. He stayed there. So I thought, that's what to do. I think it encourages people to see the bishop there. And same with the priests, we just to be there with the people we serve, and all of us to try to do what we can. So that's one of the reasons for the daily mass as well. And we kept at it. Now, I must say, I'm very grateful for the young priests of the cathedral. I celebrated mass a few months, just one every day, which is fine. I do it any day anyway, and I'm glad to do it. But the young lads have given me a day off, so I can get away. So I get a bit of a distance and visit my sister, things like that. So I think the presence is important in any kind of leadership, especially in times of trouble. Prayer, my gosh, this has been a time for us to think about prayer. I'm doing for the Lectio Divina this coming year, starting tomorrow. I'm doing on the Psalms. Boy, they really tell us about suffering. Gosh. And the Psalms are so real, so concrete, with every suffering and emotion and joy and everything there. So prayer. It's the time that really leads us into deeper prayer. And I think whatever our role is, we need to pray for the people we serve. And we all serve our families. We serve mothers and fathers. We teachers praying for their students, bishops. We every day, pastors. Every Sunday we say a mass for the people. So this praying for the people we serve is very important part of the role in this time. Also, I think there have been some good things to look forward, not in the midst of all this bad that I'm talking about. You know, the old saying, when life gives you lemon, make lemonade. So I don't think that's in that Gospel of Matthew or anything. It's probably somewhere else. But there are unanticipated opportunities through this crisis. And one of the things is we've all faced a sudden elimination of our activities and of distractions as well. That's not been good in the sense of people, losing their jobs, things like that. But I mean, in a lot of other ways, we've all faced that. Like I would be going out to banquets and things and stuff like that. I'd be flying to Rome here and there. And I often wonder, now I'm really thinking, I don't know what you think about it, but like every year we have a week of the bishops meeting together in Cornwall at the NAV Canada Centre. It's nice, to get together. But we're doing it by video. 5 days, 2 hours each. That's it. And I must say there's something to be said for that. To be said for it. So you mean we can actually put the work into 5 2-hour segments? And I think of all this stuff. I'm not on the Vatican Bank anymore, but I used to be in the Vatican Bank Commission. I'd be flying over there, and you have about a day's meetings, and then you have it's a week at least. I used to think of that when I was the Archbishop of Edmonton. We have a day and a half. We have 2 half days over an afternoon and a morning on the Permanent Council of the Bishops in Ottawa. So I would have to have a day to fly there from Edmonton, another day to be there, another day to have, then another day to get back. So there's been something maybe that's not that bad. I don't mind these. I must say I don't mind so much having 5 2-hour sessions instead of a whole week. I mean, sorry, I missed the guys. Like to have a coffee with them. A little bit of the warmth, a little fellowship. I could wave. But I kind of like it actually. And we have these things, so I think there's something to be said for that. So but also I've been reading more. I've been thinking more. I've been planning more. I'm realizing, well, I'm 73 and a half now, so good grief, I'm kind of. I feel like I'm, kind of aging along. I've been a priest 47 years. Oh, good Lord, 23 a bishop, who knew? So I think, but I got to rev it up. My plan is, I'm thinking of it sort of like they say when you land on the carrier, you're coming in for a landing, you rev up the engine so that if you keep on going, you don't fall into the water. So you can take off if you need. So I'm kind of planning it that way, but it's great. I can read more, I can think more, and I'm probably making better decisions. I look back, as you get on in years, you think of the stupid decisions you've made. You think, oh, Lord, what was I thinking, And I think often what it has been is not that the details were misunderstood, it's that you didn't frame the question properly. And that comes from not enough sleep. It comes from being too busy. That the idea is not to be more busy. The idea is to do more useful, sensible things. So if we're just constantly busy, going here, going there, going everywhere. Now, I kind of do that anyway. I've been bouncing around the diocese for 13 years now, and I like doing it. I enjoy it, But I'm discovering, I'm reading things. I'm thinking. I'm going back into Dante again. You see a picture of Dante behind me, this little statue on the thing. I got all my Dante books. I've been, so it's a lot of good. Eliminating distractions can help us get our heads screwed on the right way and be more fruitful, actually. not so much expensive travel and meetings and stuff. Necessity is the mother of invention. And this is a good talk about mothers. Necessity is the mother of invention. When we are up against it and suddenly everything falls apart, we got to think of what we do, like doing this kind of stuff. This is amazing. You lose the personal contact, but I'm just thinking, like, I always phone my sister every night pretty well if I can. I used to phone her. Now I Skype with her. So gosh, it's not quite the same, but it's pretty good. You know, I get to look at the cats, Patrick and Mickey. Mickey is a real adventurous little kitty, and Patrick is calm. Patrick is a beautiful cat with a furry tail. He just calm. Mickey's feisty little thing. So I get to see Patrick and Mickey twirling around on the floor. I mean, that's very nice. You don't get that on a phone. So, I mean, I think that's. I used to remember when I was a deacon a couple of years ago. I was staying at St. Eugene's Parish in Hamilton, and I noticed you'd have this beside the beds. There were these little phones with little buttons that would light up if a line was being used. Every evening, I saw one light up, and it was Bishop Redding calling his sister. And I thought, well, that's a good idea. I'm a baby brother, so I keep finding to get in touch. So, but we've done things that actually are. I mean, I wouldn't mind if some of them kind of continued. Creative use of technology, even this live streaming thing. You know, we started it at the cathedral. Well, we had a 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock mass, which is really good. I'm sorry we don't have both now, especially the 7, because it helps the people to get to work if they want to get earlier. But we couldn't have 2 masses because you have to clean after each. So we have it 7:30. So there we are. But you know, it's not the same as mass. You don't receive. Well, it's not. We're not meant to be pixels. You know, we're meant to have this. But there's something you can gain. Something can be gained for. That's the same justification for the daily mass from the Abbey, and it seems to be helpful to people. I'm getting emails and letters from people all over the world. I'm amazed. These people are writing in from the United States, from Pakistan, from India, from South America, all over the place. And you look at the little thing where it tells you we've got about, normally, by the end of the day, 5 to 6, now it's up to around 6,000 computers clicked into the Mass of the Cathedral. And that would mean sometimes you have 2 or 3 people at a computer. So who knows, maybe 5, 6, 10,000 people are in some way finding some spiritual benefit from that. And although it's not the same as Mass, it is the same as the Rosary. Because, and the Lectio Divina is, you don't lose anything by getting this on TV as distinct from being there. Well, essentially you see the church, but that is not like a sacrament. And the Rosary is not a sacrament. The Rosary is a prayer, like a regular prayer. So people sitting at home watching the computer screen and praying the Rosary along, even if it's done 10 hours after it actually happened, that's a prayer. That's as much a prayer as if it were something else. But what we do is we have the prayer of St. Alphonsus Liguori for spiritual communion. And so we do that when I'm holding the host before receiving communion. We do that, and I hope that's of some help to people. So that's actually kind of something that's been of value that we didn't know about before. I also think, I used to mention this more in the homilies earlier on in this pandemic, but the fact of the presence of death is sobering. And when we see so many people, when anyone realizes that, you know, we tend to forget that we think we can go on and on. And that's not true. Life is short. So whenever we have something like a pandemic, it kind of reminds us of that. And that's good spiritually, that we don't think we can just drift along. It sharpens our awareness a bit. So I think in leadership, in terms of the midst of a pandemic. It is leadership in the face of the brevity of life. And there's a psalm that says, Lord, teach me the shortness of life, that I may gain wisdom of heart. And I think in the midst of this pandemic, we may gain more wisdom of heart that will be of benefit to us later on. If we have a kind of an enforced solitude, it can lead to anger and frustration and very terrible things. It could also lead to a deeper life. This constantly being on the go. Like I think constantly, my own life, flying here and there to meetings and stuff. Although I've got an invitation to a meeting in Rome at the end of February. So I said, okay, I'll be there, but I'll see whether, I'll make a decision in January my love for some of the pasta on Borgo Pio is not strong enough to make me want to. I tell you, when I was younger, I thought going on a plane was a great, exciting thing, but I tell you, the years go by, it's not. So I've been kind of rejoicing that maybe I won't have to, wanted to go to Rome, no. But against Rome, nice city, be it ever so humble, there's no place like Rome, I know. But I just like, but home, I want to stay home. I like E.T., I want to go home. So, anyway, but I think being aware of the solitude and being more at home, it can lead us to a deeper life. And I think that's leadership at time of pandemic means dealing with a crisis, turning the lemon into lemonade, helping us all do that. And that's something. The other thing is, I mentioned in one of the homilies, I think a few days ago, it occurs to me that this whole mask thing, I know masks don't protect us. The very fascinating thought, masks apparently, as these shields somehow do, but not the mask. The mask protects other people, not us. So if everyone is wearing the mask when it's appropriate in the place, unless you have a health condition says you shouldn't. But basically, when everyone's wearing the mask, if we all help one another, we are all helped ourselves. And that's a very important thing, because one of the horrible things in our society is this sense of I, ego, autonomous ego. It's in terms of euthanasia, it's in terms of abortion, it's in terms of everything in between. That I want it, it is mine. And so get out of my way. And you see it in a lot of this stuff, the hammering down people, yelling at them, throwing names at people, phobic, this and that and everything. And, you have a classroom of people. I've heard teachers talking, professors, people like that. You have a classroom of people. You say, I don't know, the moon is round. And somebody out there is offended, and so it's the I, and once a person says I, then, this is madness. There's a whole bunch of subjective little egos out there, and once one of them is triggered, you have to have trigger warnings. This is madness. And we can't live this way. So the idea that we're trying, at least in a lot of this thing, we're being trained to be helpful to other people. Wear the mask so you don't help yourself, you help others, and then you get helped indirectly. Stay back so that you won't get hurt, but others won't either. So this very unusual dimension of these irritating procedures we have to go through now is something very beautiful. And we need it in other ways. I hope that once we get rid of all these masks and 6-foot distancing and stuff, and I hope as soon as we can, and we can get to see our faces again, it affects our ability to relate. We just see masks. This is nuts. We can't relate to one another. You wave. It's like we have to use emojis to talk to one another because you can't see the face. But once we get rid of it all, I hope that the idea of a discipline of self in order to help another person, help the common good, will remain. That maybe, I think, in terms of leadership in the plague, is maybe the greatest hope, that the generosity that was stimulated by this, and the concern for the common good in the midst of a crisis will remain, at least I hope, for quite some time. Hope we've learned that. If we can learn that, and maybe my role as a spiritual leader is to help people do that. If I can, I've got to learn it myself first. But but I hope it will be helpful to people. Anyway, my favorite psalm, By the Waters of Babylon, because I Babylon, 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 and I think I can now take my talk. And I used to know how to do this. I've since the days of my boyhood, which were quite some time ago, sadly, it's getting my talk. And so I think I can say, having ended my talk, that there it goes. Done.
Well, thank you, so much for taking the time. There are a couple of comments here in the chat box, which I thought you might get a kick out of. Someone says, we are blessed to have the live stream Mass, even more blessed to have Cardinal Collins leading us and praying for us. Thank you for explaining everything to us today with your wonderful sense of humor. Our Mother's Group leader from St. Benedict says, thank you, Cardinal Collins, for clarifying receiving communion on the hand. My concern about the whole situation is that it's divided Catholics. A lot of just don't understand. So there's just another mom here. She's our Mother's Group leader at St. Anne's. She says, the 7:30 a.m. Mass actually helped me not to be lazy. Once the lockdown started, routines were broken, and being able to attend that Mass and pray the Rosary daily helped me and the kids a lot.
Good.
So
I'm so happy. That's great.
Yeah, and then someone's joking here too about the airplane. Boys will be boys, making it. So it's just been wonderful having this time with you, Anna Cabral. My son just got a kick out of seeing Thomas throw the paper airplane. Thank you for being so relatable to us all. Dear Cardinal, you are amazing. I'm so thankful to see you with Mass and the Rosary each day. It helped me. I told my daughter and their families, and she's in Newfoundland, and I watched it from Bermuda. Oh, wow. So what a delight our Good Shepherd is. So you've got a lot of moms that love you.
Oh my gosh. Oh dear.
There's a lot of love there. A dear friend of mine too, she said that one thing that struck her about the masks is that it forced her now to look at people's eyes.
Well, that's an idea. Yeah.
Right. And
that's the point. Yeah.
She said, and she goes, so my interaction even with someone at Walmart, like now I've got to like
look in their eyes.
Look at their eyes. And so that's very, very interesting. So you've taken us on quite a journey, showing us that as leaders, whether of an archdiocese or a Mother's Group, sometimes we're the target of a lot of anger, a lot of unknown, that we ourselves sometimes as leaders don't know what to do. And that as leaders, we need to commit to more prayer, to look for the silver lining. And I think too what you said about just being present, like don't throw in the towel on your ministry.
Yeah. Just being there is very important. Showing up for things, just being there. We have to be physically present as best we can, or present somehow. Just that's really important for everyone. And in all our relationships.
Yeah, and I think sometimes there's a temptation for Mother's Group leaders, it's sort of all or nothing. Like either I can have the mothers group meeting with the fresh baked goods and the tea and the hugs and the catechesis, or I'm doing nothing. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I know you don't like the technology, I know, but please continue to be there, you know, for in group similar to this, you know?
Yeah, I think that's just, we often, what we say doesn't mean that much, you know, we shouldn't convince ourselves we do, you know, but just being there, I think it's a helpful thing. What can we do in a crisis when our words can't explain it really? So it's better just to be there with one another and to pray together. I mean, that's the great thing about the rosary. We're all together praying and we repeat the prayers together. There's something beautiful about that.
Yeah, and I liked what you said about the idea that that, you know, you get the same benefits out of praying the rosary online as you you know, do praying it at home. So we do encourage people to continue with the mothers groups and praying the rosary. And we do have a number of heroic mothers group leaders that are praying online every single week with the moms. So we appreciate that. So any kind of final words for just mothers in general, because we do live in a crazy culture where, you know, mothers are, I always say they're expected to be amazing cooks, to work full time, to be beautiful, to have a Martha Stewart home. And like I'm like saying, sometimes we're forgetting to be Catholics and all of that, you know? So, and any thoughts for mothers and mothering during this kind of remarkable time where we live in a hedonistic and materialistic pandemic, right?
Well, we really, this is a very difficult time. That's one of the reasons I encourage the praying of the St. Michael prayer after the, you know, and a lot of things that seem to be noble, like caring for others and being, you know, attacked, have underneath them a seed of destruction, which is very dangerous. So we're in a very difficult time. And what can we do? I think we need to love. And there's nothing more fundamental than the relationship in families. This is, you know, it doesn't take a village. It takes a family of, you know, to live. So mother's role is fundamental to life, you know, in every way. There's nothing more fundamental than that. So we really, I think, just to live, to give a good example. You know, the things we do and the things we say maybe are not as what exactly is needed at the moment, because none of us is perfect. We're all kind of blundering along. But it's who we are that matters in the long run, people's experience over time. And they'll ignore some of the mistakes we make or whatever, our weaknesses or inadequacies, if they realize that we love and care for them. And then being there with the people we love. And that's what prayer is too. It's being with the one we love. So it's not a lot of, you don't have like, somebody said, how do you pray? What's the way to do it? Well, our Lord was asked, how do you pray? He said, our Father who art in heaven. You know, it isn't, as our Lord said in one of the manuscripts of the Matthew's Gospel, it isn't rocket science. No, that's not in the gospel. But, you know, it's not all that complicated. It's difficult, not because it's complicated, but because our own wills sometimes get in the way, you know. So I think I pray, and if all of the mothers group and all who are part of this, just again, you know, keep me in your prayers. I got a lot of, you know, we all have things we're dealing with, and I just sometimes figure, what am I going to do? You know, am I doing the right thing? It's trying to understand things is very difficult. You know, well, we all see that. Like trying to understand the family, trying to understand the diocese, trying to understand situations, especially difficult situations. You hope you do it right. You say, Lord, give me the wisdom to do the right thing and do that. But, you know, and anyone who has responsibility, and that's mothers, fathers, that's bishops, it's pastors, it's people, government leaders. We need a lot of prayer because, you know, we need to pray that we will make the right decisions. And when we haven't made that, we've made a blunder or something, we just pray the Lord to bring it to good. Despite our own frailty, God writes straight with crooked lines. So I just think we need to pray for one another. And that's a great source. I'm very happy in being the bishop. I get up every Mass in the diocese, I get prayed for. But I always often end off a letter, keep me in your prayers as you are in mine. Pray for me. And I'm just so grateful when people come and I just yesterday I was on the street here, just a lady was walking along, we were chatting for a while. And so I'm praying she gave me some things to pray for, and I gave her some things to pray for. I said, pray for my special intentions. And she said, okay, I'll pray for them. The trouble is most of us, we can't actually say exactly what we want to pray for, but just the special intention covers everything. So anyway, so I just say to all of you, keep me in your prayers as you are in mine. And maybe I'll end off with a blessing for everyone in taking part in this. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May Almighty God give you his peace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless.
Amen.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much, Cardinal Collins. One of our Mothers Group leaders here says, thank you for such a wonderful talk, Cardinal Collins. You were so easy to listen to and provide so much depth and information. Always amazing. Another mom, we love you, Cardinal. You really are a people's spiritual father. So there's a lot of love here for you.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. It just touches my heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we ask you to continue to pray for the ministry, continue to pray for the mother leaders. And
great. I'm so glad you're doing all this. This is wonderful, Dorothy. It just keep up the good work and everyone taking part in it. Oh, I tell you, it's wonderful.
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you. And please know that you are loved and you're not alone. And now's the time to, just send you a big virtual hug.
Okay, we'll go like that. I'll go around my computer. And now I'm going to go and I'm going to have a muffin with my sister.
Okay. That's wonderful. So thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.